Teachers of Reddit, what was something that the class clown did that genuinely made you laugh? This is high school biology. A guy who was known for being a pretty good voice actor was reading a page on the properties of fungi and multiple impressions, making everyone laugh. He often got picked to read after that, and never disappointed. We've had Yogi Bear, Irish guy, Disney princess, Shaggy, Scottish guy, Patrick Warburton, and many more. Before he graduated, his voice was also recorded for phone messages informing of school events, school's voicemail, and MC for many school events. A friend in junior high used to be able to do a perfect Darth Vader. This was shortly after Star Wars first came out. He would just start making the breathing noises as though that was how he breathed normally. Dead quiet class. Kushka a kushka a kushka. We would all start snickering, until the teacher told him to cut it out. I befriended a kid in high school who had very mild Asperger's. Once you got to know him, oh my god, he was hilarious. The jokes he'd make were very clever, and he was very talented with accents plus voices too. I wish there were a way for him to work with Matt Groening or something. My favorite was his angry Irishman, or as he called himself, Patrick Obesity. These Aspergers go straight to my thighs. I had a student that could only do one impression, but he was great at it. He did Richard Dawson on Family Feud. If a student answered wrong, he'd say survey says, wrong. He studied extra hard so he would know when other people were wrong, and some of the other students started doing that too so they could beat him to it. That was many years ago, but I still think about him often. In a big 300-person study hall at my high school, some guy started making the sound effect of a drag racer going through the gears. The football coach kept running around trying to find the culprit. But when he went to one side of the cafeteria, someone on the other side would take it up. Finally, the coach, red-faced, yelled, "All right, stop it." The next sound was that of brisk squealing. The whole cafeteria lost it. Talking about statistics on industrial maiming accidents during the Gilded Age, and this kid raises his hand and asks in all seriousness if getting one's nipple rings ripped out by a 19th century textile machine would count as maiming. I was teaching in China, a private school where parents or the child carers would attend also, and this one child would not listen to me or anybody else. He was totally free and involved in his own wild world. His father accompanied him but would go into the very back of the room to talk on his cell phone. I had warned the parent to put down or shut off the phone and pay attention to his son. He didn't listen either. I eventually took the phone from the father. His son yelled, in English, to his father, "You intriguable," and he laughed and laughed, such a contagious giggle. I guess the kid was paying attention. While teaching say reproduction to year 8, one student loudly announced, "I don't get why they call it the birds and the bees. Trains and tunnels makes way more sense." I remember it every single time I teach that unit, and it still makes me giggle. Not really, there are age-appropriate ways to introduce the concepts. You don't have to go into explicit details at that age, but knowing basic anatomy and where do babies come from is quite reasonable at that age. My 5-year-old has asked questions and I've answered the basic mechanics of say and explained that it's something that grown-ups do because it comes with big feelings. You have to be careful about sharing germs and sicknesses, and you have to be careful about avoiding making babies when you don't want one, because they're a lot of work. Absolutely a conversation that an 8-year-old can handle. I am teaching Sayed to my 8th graders, in the US, tomorrow and will have a tough time not saying this now. In German it's the bees and the flowers, which I think makes a bit more sense but we could also do better. On my first class, I asked my students to introduce themselves saying their names, their hometown and something they liked. Most of them were guys and they liked music, sports, video games and such. After 4 guys introduced themselves, the 5th guy said, "Hi, I'm Peter, I'm from X place and unlike the other guys, I like girls," and we all laughed way too loud. I am from Minnesota and had a female physical ed teacher. It was almost spring and a colder day. She asked me to go out and see if we would play kickball outside or stay inside for floor hockey. I came inside and held my finger and thumb an inch apart and said, "It is cold out there." Without missing a beat she said, "Floor hockey it is." We had a couple of classes on public speaking in like year 8 and our teacher gave us an exercise to prepare an introduction speech. Everyone would go to the front of the class, sit down on a chair and say things like, "Hello, my name is X, I am from Y, I am in class N," etc. Then my turn came and I didn't think what I was going to say at all because I was a lazy poss and just spent the time everyone had to prepare to play Pokemon Yellow on an emulator on my phone. So I go up front, sit down and go, "Hey guys, my name is Kingsghost, but you should have really picked up on that after all the years I've been your classmate. I also don't feel the need to say where I'm from because we are all currently in the same school, in the same class, doing the same public speaking exercise." Thankfully for me the teacher was pretty chill and found it funny. I actually became the go-to guy to host school events after that. I am from Minnesota and had a female physical ed teacher. It was almost spring and a colder day. She asked me to go out and see if we would play kickball outside or stay inside for floor hockey. I came inside and held my finger and thumb an inch apart and said, "It is cold out there." Without missing a beat she said, "Floor hockey it is." We did the same thing in class. One dude went, "I'm, name, and in my free time I'm Batman." Teacher, "You're not Batman." Dude, "Have you ever seen Batman and me in the same room?" "No." "So that means I'm Batman." Another said, "One, I'm afraid." After explaining in the most professional way 22-year-old me could, what a blowjob was, this was somewhat undermined by a young lad on the front row announcing in his best stage whisper, "That's disgusting, I'm not putting my wing-wang in anyone's mouth." The good old stage whisper. Once when we were discussing cleavage in earth science class I said my favorite property and like half the class laughed and the other class didn't know what had happened. In our doctorate level anatomy 2 class, the professor was lecturing about facial muscles. We got to the buccinator, and the professor said it's sometimes referred to as the BJ muscle. There were a few scattered giggles through the room, except the girl sitting in the front row. Right by the professor. She asked, "BJ, what's that?" The other was a little taken aback, but said, "A blowjob." The girl then asked, "But what's a blowjob?" The teacher told her to ask one of her friends later. The girl turns immediately to the girl behind her and asked. She busts out, "No way? Gross." The teacher couldn't help but laugh with the rest of the class. It was even better because this was a group of 24-30 students. I remember when our teacher invited some ed guys and we talked a lot about oral sex. After they left, some boys started talking about if they would let their wife suck their d, and one said, "Nah bro, she's gonna kiss our children with that mouth." Then they asked Kother if they would lick their wives. And then a different guy who hadn't said a word for hours is like, "Dude, I wanna kiss my children too." The teacher lost her shit and said, "Let's go. You guys have a 15 minutes break." That was the first time I saw her laugh like that, though that guy has said way funnier shit like every day, certainly not discussing technique, just ensuring that they knew what some of the most common terms were describing. They were given an envelope with about 15 of the most common terms: masturbation, blowjob, anal. I told them to push any that they didn't understand to the top of their desk. I walked round, scoped out what they didn't know and then came back to the front and explained them. It wasn't any more detailed than where a man puts his penis in another person's mouth for our pleasure. They're going to hear these terms anyway, so it's better they get a correct, in-context explanation. It was math class and we had a system at our school where you have to have a red card to use the bathroom during lesson time. It was only given to students with bladder issues and stuff. So this girl needed to go to because she was on her period and the teacher says no. She asked her again and the teacher was like, "Not unless you have a red card." "Do you have a red card?" She, student, paused for a moment, reached into her bag, pulled out her pad and held it high, then went, "Yeah. Here's it." The group of people around her laughed hard, but no one else had heard what she said and were very confused. WTF kind of system was that? When he had to go to the bathroom or take a call or something, we'd just leave. Teachers preferred it that way because it wouldn't disturb the lessons. While walking around the classroom, I tripped on a boy's backpack and almost face-planted on the floor. A girl asked me if I were okay, to which I replied no, X almost killed me. He turned to me and, without missing a beat, replied I won't fail next time. We still laugh about it about every 2 weeks. Definitely my favorite in that group. I am not indeed. But, regardless of location, I also build relationships with my students based on mutual respect and on humor, so we tease each other very often. It allows for better lessons and more engaged kids. Also, it's far less boring and it prevents me from going mad from an otherwise very stressful job. I had a class of 4 for A-level chemistry. They were all very bright and some of the greatest students I had. We were talking about isomers when the brightest boy in the class asks Miss, how do snakes have say? Which led to the whole rest of the class and me bursting in laughter. The following discussion of a mating ball only added to the laughter. Became a meme in the class. When we would get off track, someone would say snakes say and then we would giggle and go back to work. My F39 son, M5, was in trouble and we were sitting in chairs in front of the principal's desk. The principal pointed at his chair and said, "What would you do if your dad was sitting there?" My son looked really puzzled and said, "Stand." I looked at the principal and I was trying not to laugh, so I looked down so I wouldn't laugh at her not laughing. Under the desk, I saw that she had one high heel pressed down on the top of her other foot. She was inflicting pain on herself so she wouldn't bust a gut. I had a habit of throwing markers at students and asking them to throw it back. I'd hold up a hand but never actually try to catch it. Just stood there motionless. During a physics unit, I was tossing a tennis ball around the room. I asked a kid to throw it and took my normal pose. He took his shot and lobbed it, lightly, at my crotch. Direct hit. Once a kid in my class said something really stupid, I don't remember what it was, and she just stared at him blankly. After about 10 seconds another kid said, "What's up?" and she said, "I am wondering if I would get fired if I threw a marker at him." Did a presentation about conspiracy theories. It was assessed and had to be recorded. He started off so normal, until he got to the Da Vinci Code, and started talking about the possibilities of Jesus and Mary having say. I lost it, but held it together, for the recording. Then asked him to elaborate on other theories he had heard. He calmly said, "Well, there was this one that said that Hitler was a dolphin and I had to escort myself out." Our class weirdo once held a presentation on the moon landing as part of a physics class and he tried to convince everyone the moon landing was a hoax. Was the first time I saw someone get a fail on a presentation that wasn't just a Wikipedia article pasted into PowerPoint. Did a presentation about conspiracy theories. It was assessed and had to be. I confiscated a kid's phone because he arrived to lesson using it to listen to Eminem on full volume. He swore at me, then walked to the front of the classroom, disconnected my monitor from my PC and calmly carried it out of the classroom stating, "You steal my phone, I steal your monitor!" I teach computer science, so I was really pleased when he said monitor. He had only ever referred to it as the TV before and I didn't think he was listening when we did output devices. Silver lining. I had a teacher that smacked meter sticks on tables to wake up sleeping students or to scare them into shutting up and not disrupting the class. Anyways, one science class this kid falls dead asleep, like snoring and everything. Everyone gets quiet and the teacher creeps up from behind him and smacked the meter stick so hard on the table he broke it in half. Scared the foo out of the student and he never fell asleep in class again. We all laughed about it for the whole semester. My career as a 5th grade math, biology teacher was a very short one because I always laughed at the stupid shit kids say, and even when you're doing your best to hold up the laugh, the kids will smell it miles away like if they're a beagle on the hunt. And you'll lose control of the class very fast. Now, some examples. The kids had to make a poster about an animal. These group of kids were doing one about the fox, but the images they were using were very low res. I said to them to Google another, but to do the search in English, I'm Portuguese, to see if they could get higher quality images. Half the images the kid got by googling Fox were Megan Fox in bikini. Quickly, the kid screamed to the rest of the class, "Everyone, Google Fox." It was the teacher that asked us to do it. First day of myself as a teacher, one of the kids started pestering me. "Teacher," he called me horsefat. The other kid quickly replied, "What about you? You called me planet Jupiter fat." That completely cracked me up. But sounds funnier in Portuguese. My high school mathematics teacher was always really serious and stressed, but we saw him laugh just once. It was right towards the end of the last year, close to our exams and graduation. The Mighty Boosh was just starting to become popular, and so some people who'd seen it started quoting bits from it. In maths class, these two kids started messing around, play fighting, and I think one of them was trying to get something back that the other took. The teacher shouted at them, asking what the hell they were doing, and then this loudmouth girl who was notorious for saying silly things in class just said, "It's alright sir, he just wants to see Josh's mangina." You could see the teacher trying to fight off the laughter, and then he just burst out giggling, and the whole class followed. Hardly anyone had seen the Mighty Boosh at that point, so it sounded as though she'd made up the word mangina herself. The whole class and teacher broke down. It took ages to get back on track. There was another one that I think was even funnier, although the teacher didn't laugh as much. We had these two guys in a different class who were the definition of class clowns and were consistently hilarious. We were just sitting there one time, doing our work, and one of the guys obviously got bored and wanted to cause a scene. Out of nowhere, he stood up really quickly, slamming his hands onto the table, and his chair flew backwards and fell over. Then he sang as loud as he could, "Cut my cheese into pieces, this is my last dessert." He sung almost a whole verse of Papa Roach's Last Resort but themed around food while everyone pissed themselves laughing before the teacher shot him a confused but amused look and just said, "Do you mind?" He just sat down and carried on working as if nothing happened. I used to teach grade 5, 10-year-olds, and the class clown one year was genuinely a talented comedian. But rather than all the interruptions he could cause, I decided to try and harness some of his energy. The class ate lunch every day in the classroom, so once a week it was his day to entertain the class at lunch. New jokes, new stories, new voice impressions. It worked well. That was over 20 years ago and I still wonder if he will become famous and I'll be able to say I knew him when I was monitoring a SAD talk, which was separated into boys and girls rooms. The woman who was leading the boys' room got to the portion where she shows how to properly put on a condom, and takes out a dildo instead of a phallic fruit, which is what I think the boys were expecting, and one boy said something like, "Oh shit, men, better cover your ass." She looks too comfortable handling that. And half that class had no idea what he was talking about and the other class fell out of their chairs, and the woman presenting winked and said, "And you may wanna open those ears." For most women, this is the only thing that can handle them when men fail. Check out our other videos and subscribe and leave your suggestions and experiences in the comments below. Have a great day.